Welcome everyone. This is our solar developer panel discussion. I'm Cindy McCabe with the Montgomery County Green Bank. On the call, we also have Tom Deo, our Chief Executive Officer, excuse me, I apologize. As I mentioned, Josh Myers, Administrative Specialist, Steve Morrell, our Chief Investment Officer, Rokas Beresniovas, our Director of Commercial Business. And Josh, give me a thumbs up if Jean is on. Jean, not yet? Okay, all right. Well, Jean Moyer is our business manager and Sanaya McDuffie is our marketing director. So welcome from our team. It's not a huge team, but we are growing. So this is the agenda for today. I'm just going to go over an introduction to the panel and briefly to the Green Bank. And then we'll have Stacy Hughes speaking on behalf of Sunlight General, Matt Coleman on behalf of Skyview Ventures, Sean M., I don't want to say your name wrong, from Revolve, I'll have you say it, I'm sorry, McGahee, is that right? Okay, yes. We will have Q&A at the end, but also we'll take a break in between each speaker for Q&A. If you have any questions, down at the bottom of your screen, there should be a chat button. You can go ahead and put questions in there. So let's talk really quick. Many of you may already know this, or you might be a little fuzzy on it. What is a Green Bank? We are a nonprofit mission-driven organization that was chartered by the county, but we're independent. We are a 501c3 with a board of directors. And even though we have the word bank in our title, we're more of a fund for environmental projects, specifically projects in clean energy and energy efficiency upgrades. If you have any questions about what we do, definitely put a question in the chat. So what have we done is the next question you may have. Here are some sort of snapshots. We've helped affordable condominiums, some commercial businesses. You may have heard of the Only Ale House. They had a little bit of a fire. We helped them rebuild and reopen. We do residential financing in partner with Clean Energy Credit Union for solar and geothermal. We do EV charger projects. We do community solar. That's our picture there with the ribbon at the bottom. And that one is special because it has a 30% carve out for low to moderate income subscribers. So we're super proud of that one. I'm a subscriber as well. And then we have some technical assistance. We won't go over this whole chart. It's a long, detailed chart, but basically we've got a lot of different products. We do have our residential product that's on the top. Since we have some developers on the line, we'll mainly be focusing on commercial solar today. In the commercial solar sector, we do have options for folks that want to own their solar system, including CPACE, which is processed on the property tax surcharge bill. We've got our Clear loan. We've got a small business loan. And then looking at the third-party ownership options, we've got our commercial solar PPA, which we'll talk about today, and community solar as well. And then we also have sort of an other category, which is tailored structure finance. So if what your organization is looking for doesn't already fit into one of our buckets, we can talk about doing something creative. So just because you don't see what you want on here, you can still reach out and ask us. One important thing to note is that our geographical limits are the borders of Montgomery County. So if your project is in Montgomery County, definitely reach out to us and we can let you know what we can do to help. We do a lot of work with Interfaith Power and Light in the DMV area. And we ran a map of how many faith-based organizations we're helping. And it looks like 27 as of February. That's why there's a plus there, because we are getting more and more every week. Sometimes it seems like every day. So that's just not to say that we only work with faith-based organizations. It's just one of our specialties. So let's talk quickly about community solar. Some of you may be in the community solar business and some of you may be thinking about getting into it. You may be wondering, well, I am a solar installer. What exactly is the developer's role? So we made this chart to sort of break it down. So we'll start with the right side, actually, the simpler side. That's where the developer contracts with the solar installer for the installation and payment of the installation. That is a direct contract between the installer and the developer. Let's go over to the right side where it's a little bit more complicated. So we'll start with the developer, which is in the middle. The developer gets financing from the Green Bank in a loan. And you can see the property owner is on this side. The property owner signs a contract directly with the developer, not with the solar installer. And this is for community solar, and that also counts for PPAs. You can see that there's a subscriber organization, but it has a star on it. And that's because some of the developers, which you'll learn about today, are their own subscriber organizations. So you may not need that. Some developers offer community solar and some do not. So this is just showing you that in third-party relationships, the developer contracts with the installer and not. The property owner doesn't sign a contract directly with the installer. That's what we're trying to get at here. So the question we're going to try to get everyone to be able to answer in their head today is when and why should I contact the Green Bank? Why, if I have a property in Montgomery County, why, now that you're introducing me to your developers, why not go directly to them? We're going to try to get you the answers to that today. But just to start is basically because since we're chartered by the county, we have funding that's at lower interest than what's available in the market. So if you pair our funding with the developers' tools and powers, we get a project that's at better offers for the properties than would otherwise. We also can offer financial comparisons, some limited project management assistance, and things like that. So we'll go into that a little bit more. I wanted to stop and introduce Stacy Hughes from Sunlight General.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Let me see if I can share my screen. I'm not the best at this, but we'll see what happens. There, looks like that worked, although that's not that exciting. It's one of our solar projects. So my name is Stacy Hughes. I am the CFO of Sunlight General Capital. We're based in New York City and Hillsborough, New Jersey. We're a team of about 20 to 25 people. It flexes sometimes. And we primarily do development and finance, and we 100% do solar. And most of our projects are on the C&I or modest kind of size. Let me see if I can go to the next slide here. So our background is we're a group of people that had primarily come from finance kinds of background. So that's the expertise we're bringing. Although, fortunately, we brought in some people, some engineers and technicians who actually know something as well. And so we have a partnership of that internally. But we're super excited to be here on this panel today and talking to you guys because we'd love to get some introductions here, because the two things where we really look to our partners to get all of our solar projects done is first is lead generation, because we actually don't do that ourselves. People tend to call us when they're looking for finance, and that's primarily what we're doing, is we're providing one form of finance or another to the process. So there's that. So, and the second part is we do everything except construction. So we have in-house the ability to engineer a site with the ability to figure out what we're looking for, how much production it will have, and so on, which can make things a lot easier when the owner and the EPC are on the same page about what's being built. But then we turn the construction over to the team that brought us the deal, assuming that they want to construct it. We do have some partners who from time to time have a great lead on a project that needs to be financed, but for whatever reason doesn't want to build it. That's not a problem. We can just pay a fee for that, a finder's fee kind of situation. But most typically, if a local installer, electrician, EPC, contractor finds a project, typically they would like to be the one who builds it, and that's totally great. We're completely happy with that. So the notes I have here and on this slide, just to quickly jump in on that, is what we basically seek to be most of the time is a long-term owner of the asset. So we end up partnering with both the builder and the site host. It can be a direct offtake. For example, we have done a lot with municipalities. We've done some things with airports, all sorts of different clients. And I'll show you a few pictures of typical projects of ours in a second. But typically we own them in the long haul. So we have this sort of tri-party partnership with the construction person that brings it to us, who builds it, and then we have a contract to sell the power through a variety of mechanisms. We almost entirely do this mid-sized C&I sector, which I think is a good fit for the people on the phone today. We're not really doing residential, and we certainly don't do the really large ones, you know, in the desert, the utility scale. Our biggest project to date, we have one that's 6 megawatts, one that's 8 megawatts. Very happy to do those, and they're a lot more, well, they're a lot more lucrative, I suppose, for everybody, but there's not as many of them, and that's a very competitive space. And so we do a lot of projects that are somewhat on the smaller size. So if you see investment characteristics, I usually tell installers we're really looking for 200 kW and up. It's not a hard and fast rule. 198 kW, that's all right. I've even done 150 from time to time if we sort of think they'll be quick or there's a couple near each other. But 200 is sort of our basic target. It's pretty hard for us to finance a project smaller than that. So that's a guideline. Very open to behind the meter and community solar. In fact, the community solar project that Cindy mentioned, we were the partner on that, and very excited about that because, as she mentioned, we were able to structure that one in a lot of unique ways to bring 30% of the power to be for low-income residents completely free. 95% of our deals are standard PPAs, power purchase agreements, where you guys bring us the client, we have a relationship with the client, we agree to 100% finance the system, they buy the power from us, you build it. It's gotten a lot more common, though, to do maybe a grid tied, a community solar, where there's some sort of incentive, like NYSERDA in New York, or the SRECs of New Jersey, or Maryland, or DC, and CPACE as well. Cindy mentioned there's a lot of owners out there that would like to have their own system, can absolutely accommodate that. And I would say what's unique about us is, first of all, we are willing to do somewhat smaller projects under a PPA or a finance solution than a lot of other developers. But also we're willing to be pretty creative, as is the Green Bank, and they're great to work with. I can endorse them on that when things get unusual. We've done deals where, or I shouldn't call them deals, but we've done solar projects where the construction partner, for example, takes a long-term equity stake, if that's important. We've done transactions where the owner has a long-term equity stake. Maybe the CPACE doesn't work, they want a PPA, but they wish that they could have some ownership in their own system. We can do that because we're a relatively small board of directors and investment committee that can be pretty flexible. So feel free always to ask about that. And one of the things we like to do early on is find out what are the motivators for the people that are involved in the transaction. In terms of our track record, we were founded in 2009. I'm one of the founders. And at this point, we have quite a number of private equity funds and tax equity funds and public-private partnerships. I don't need to get into all that, but we've deployed probably about 350 million over this 12, 13 years, which is a lot, but it's also not that big in the scheme, certainly in the scheme of the energy world, but even in the scheme of the solar world, we're a little bit smaller, and that's fine. We're happy to be a little smaller, and it allows us to do some of these smaller deals. I wouldn't say we're mission-based and that the deals have to pencil, in the sense that they have to meet basic return targets, and there has to be some, the security of getting the cash flows has to be pretty good. But we do projects that interest us, that we feel are important, that can bring a low income component, all sorts of things. So we're flexible in all of that. Let me see what the next slide I have here. I'm not going to, as with Cindy, I won't go into this one so much. You've sort of got this residential, C&I, and utility. We're down the middle in the C&I. A lot of hospitals, schools, things like that. A typical financing size for us, $400,000 to $3 million. And we are basically, let's see here, what do I want to point out from here? Not too much, except for maybe on the very bottom, is that these tend to be pretty non-standardized projects. We're dealing with individuals, individual contracts, and we're okay with that. This slide is actually a slide that we talk to different stakeholders, you know, whether it's when we're fundraising or whatever, about the different things that Sunlight does, which is we develop, which is that often that's the construction partners bringing us the project. We finance, we raise the money 100%. I'll skip over construct for a second, and then Operate typically just means O&M, when we own it for the long haul and we arrange for the operations to be done. Very often, the construction partner who built it is in fact the O&M provider. That's if something you're interested in, we like to do that. It works great. When we say we construct, what we really do is we have engineers, like I mentioned, we have technical people, but we don't have construction people, not in-house. We manage the construction, we oversee it, we cause it to happen, you could say, but this is where we really rely on our partners to build the actual project. The things that we can offer here, if needed, and sometimes we do it and sometimes we don't, is we can do in-house engineering. Sometimes that saves money and it helps the team, help the host get over whatever economic issues. We can maybe make it a little more efficient. Similarly with procurement, particularly now, which everyone knows it's pretty hard right now, but we can buy solar panels, inverters, we can be helpful there, but we do plenty of projects where our construction partner is completely turnkey. They do the engineering, they do the procurement, and then we have plenty where we're bringing in engineering and procurement. Really flexible there. And what we find works well is when someone calls us up and brings us a project, we just talk about it and talk about the challenges and talk about what the host is looking for. And we ask ourselves, is there a way we can make this project more likely to get across the finish line and profitable to the installer, and also meet the sunlight return target, and also meet the savings goals of the host site? I'm just going to take one more minute because I know we have a lot of people and some Q&A time. I'll skip that. This is where we are geographically right now. It's not a hard and fast rule, but the places that are the deep blue are where we have more solar projects. We'll consider a project anywhere. The reason that we have this sort of heavy concentration in the Northeast is because, for one thing, we're here, our technical team is here, and because many of those states have had some sort of incentive. Again, if someone's looking for a really big, cheap PPA, with Georgia, Georgia Power and Light, I think it is, we're probably not the right partner. We tend to do ones that have incentives, that have rebates, that have SRECs. And so you can see a lot of those states, but we'll look at any project that that could make sense. This gives you kind of an idea. It's just a sampling. I think we have 300 projects at this point. Our average size is only about 400 kW, and we have some small ones that we bought in a portfolio and a few larger ones, but these are real middle of the fairway kinds of projects. So Teterboro Airport, some rooftops there, 700. We did do that Congregational Church, which my favorite picture of our portfolio, only 132 kW. I got talked into it. So I will look at smaller projects, but it has to be not too tangled up. Schools, there's a bigger one on the right that was 3.5 megawatts for a county up here in New Jersey, where we did a bunch of carports. We can do carports. The only issue everyone has to be aware of is they cost more, which you will know. And that means that the price for the power to the host is more expensive. The deals are harder to get done. So we like roof and ground. A couple more here, the 122, 628, 424 schools. We do a lot of those: roofs, grounds, gymnasiums, so on. So that gives you an idea of the kinds of projects we're working on. Again, we come in, we raise the money, and we partner with you to get even sort of creative and more flexible deals done. So I'll stop there if someone has a question now or later.
I had a question.
Okay.
So I'm Cord from Aurora Energy. I noticed that your expected rate of return was similar for both residential and commercial.
Yeah, we don't really do residential and commercial. So honestly, that slide is a little bit more for investors to say, why are we in C&I? Right. Practically speaking, we end up putting a little more debt on it. And so we end up being higher than the residential. The residential, that slide might be a little dated. It's probably lower on the residential at this point. What we find is that the investors that come into residential and utility are lower yield. The investors that want to be in C&I are a little higher yield. That's great. If you're an investor, it does put a little more pressure on the project sometimes because you can't get them done quite as efficiently. From our perspective, we're usually looking for something like an 8 to 9% typically IRR, right, which is standard for, I think, this segment of the industry. And I don't know. So that's kind of about that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're waiting to see if anybody has another question. I've got a poll for the group, so it should show up. And this poll is, What does your organization offer? Just PPAs, just community solar, neither or both? So let's give it a second. Developers, you can answer this too if you like. This is for everybody. All right, couple more seconds. All right, so 65% on both, 24% on none. We may have some folks on the call that actually aren't EPCs or developers, so I could see that. And then a few that just do PPAs or community solar. Interesting. All right, we'll do one more poll and then we will keep going. So let's talk about your geographical area. Where do you do most of your business? I know those DCS recs are hot. Couple more seconds. All right, I'm liking those Maryland results. That's where we are. Not too many folks saying that most of their business in DC, which is understandable. It's not a huge district. Virginia's market's just recently opening, so I can see that. And some of you are outside of the DMV, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, maybe Delaware, and then some of you are a mix. All right, if I don't see any questions, we're gonna switch over. Stacy, thank you so much. And next up is Matt Coleman with Skyview.
Hey, good morning. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. Looking good, Cindy, thank you. So good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Coleman. I'm with Skyview Ventures. Skyview Ventures is a investment firm. We are located really up and down the East Coast with offices in Nashville, Tennessee, and Greenwich, Connecticut. We are a PPA provider. We are third-party financing of solar power projects. That is just one of the financing activities that we participate in. We really have four different operating businesses. We have a commercial solar project development group. We have a electric vehicle charging group as well. We have a project finance and venture group. We actually have been investing in other solar technology companies now for over 10 years, and we'll talk more about that. And then we have a SREC financing group. And many of you may know Skyview or have done business with Skyview on the SREC side of our business. That is our largest business to date. Actually, Skyview really got going back in 2008. And at the time, was interested in looking at doing, solar project ownership and solar project development. But, in the 10, 12 years ago, the biggest pain point in a lot of these markets was, what do you do with the SRECs, right? If you look back in the history and, not just DC and Maryland, but New Jersey and Massachusetts and other states, there was a lot of uncertainty about how these credits would be valued. And for investors looking to invest in solar, it was not a known commodity like it is today, solar power projects. And so being able to tell an investor or a lender that you had a contracted price for your SRECs was a big deal. And it still is a big deal today. But certainly in the early days, so Skyview was able to put together some investment capital and provide some financing structures for other developers and owners of solar power projects. And That business is still our business today. We've done over 2 billion in transactions now in different SRECs, RECs, and now that we're expanding into electric vehicles, we've gotten very involved into carbon credits, which are markets out on the West Coast, but we may see here on the East Coast eventually. On the solar side, we did start doing our own solar development about 9 years ago. At that point, we were in more of a Connecticut company, and so we started doing work in Connecticut. We built a great relationship with the town of Fairfield, Connecticut, and we have now built over 20 projects just for that one client, the town of Fairfield, and expanded that. And I think we've got over 50 of our projects in Connecticut. Most of our projects are up and down the East Coast, and I'll get into more of that in a minute. For the electric vehicles charging, which our group is called Sky Chargers, we were a little early. We started installing charging stations in 2014, and as you can imagine, we didn't get a ton of utilization on our charging stations back then. Our first installations were at some hotels, and so you could count basically it was like 4 or 5 nights a year you'd get someone charging overnight. Now that's changed, right? Now it's really exciting to see that we've gotten a lot of use out of our charging stations now, and we've expanded that. And so we own about 300 level 2 charging ports and about over 100, I think it's over 100 now, of the DC charging fast stations. Really exciting time in the electric vehicle charging space. And then on the venture side, we've invested in 23 startups, had a couple exits. So being in this business and looking at all the different pain points that we all see in the industry, it's been nice to have the ability to say that, okay, well, here's a problem, here's something that I know needs solved, and here's a company solving it, and we've been able to invest in some of those companies. Here's our portfolio. We again concentrate much like Sunlight, a lot of concentration in the Northeast, but with opportunities elsewhere. In the DC area, we've certainly done a variety of. Actually, we own some residential solar projects in Washington DC. We've participated in some of the incentive programs there. We're trying to do, free electricity for certain segments, and we've been able to use our tax appetite to be able to participate and provide free electricity for certain residents of the district. And then, we own 5 or 6 other projects up more in the Baltimore area outside of this chart. Just a few sample pictures. We actually do own several, 5 to 7 megawatt projects. Community solar. This one is this is actually a picture of two projects on adjacent fields in New York that we own, and that's a community solar project. The other one, rooftop project in northern New Jersey, right outside of New York City, and then one of these. The bottom picture is just one of our projects in Fairfield. I think it's like a 20 kilowatt on a fire training center for the town of Fairfield. But this just gives you kind of a range of projects that we do. For the right clients in the right territories, we will do 20, 30 kilowatts at a time, but we also have the capacity to finance 7 megawatts at a time. Again, types of projects, small ground mounts, rooftops, parking lots. Maryland, like Stacy was saying, it's pretty expensive, and generally the electric rates and incentives do not support it. There are grant opportunities from the state, which can make parking lot canopies economic, and so it's certainly worth looking at for the right opportunity. Of course, as we talk here today, steel is very expensive and continuing to get more expensive. So those projects will be a little challenging, but certainly for the right opportunity, I think we can still make it pencil. EV charging. Yeah, Maryland is, they actually have, both state and utility funding and incentives available. They're, working with someone like us in the Green Bank, you can certainly have a variety of financing options and ways to, help your clients, put together whatever sort of charging program they want. Because we are an active owner of EV charging stations, we have done some volume purchase agreements with some of the hardware and software providers, and happy to work with any of you on deploying EV infrastructure at any of your locations. When it comes to solar projects, tacking on a couple ports of EV charging, we could bake that into a PPA product as well, or lease product. One thing we do, because we have our own development group, we actually we have developed our own origination engine. So we do this both for greenfield projects as well for rooftops, using a proprietary GIS system, where basically, we create a bunch of data inputs, both public and private, which means free and paid for. Run that through our filters and engines, identify attractive, again, both ground or rooftops, and then have a process to reaching out to them. Working with the Montgomery County Green Bank, which has been great. We're identifying roofs that, in targeted areas where they want to see more solar, for certain client types where they'd like to see more solar, and we can, identify the roofs that we think are going to be the best economic opportunities and, easiest to install, and hopefully provide the most benefit for the building owners and tenants. Key contract terms. I'd like to think we're pretty flexible on how we on what we put in our contracts, as long as they're financeable and make sure we have all the conditions we need to operate our solar project. But I think the key message for any of your clients is, right, your client should have no costs, no out-of-pocket upfront or ongoing costs, right? They just need to agree to purchase all the electricity if it's a PPA. And I think this is one issue that we see in a lot of these projects, is how to size the solar system relative to the load, right? We typically do not like to size solar projects larger than the host load, just because in Maryland, you're only getting basically a wholesale credit at the end of the year. You're not getting the full retail value, right? So if your PPA price is 9, 10, 11 cents a kilowatt hour, and they're only getting 3 cents benefit for that extra electricity, then that's really a cost to them. And so we like to try and avoid that if we can. But otherwise, we make sure they allow the sunlight to hit the solar system. We like to make sure that we put solar projects on pretty new roofs, so we don't have to worry about repairing the roof during the 20 years of the contract. But I will caveat and say we've certainly found ways to put into our contracts ways to manage that. There's, if there is a need to replace a roof in, the first 20 years, we can have a conversation with the building owner about the best way to structure that in the contract. Termination, obviously, making sure they understand that this is a 20-year investment for us, and if they want to terminate early, that there is a penalty for that. And at the end of the system, I think 20 years is pretty far out, so few people know exactly what they want to do. So we just make sure they have options, whether they want to remove the system, extend the contract, or they can buy it at the fair market value. So Skyview, just to summarize, we are more than a third-party financing firm, but when it comes to working with folks on PPA and site leases, I think we have a good benefit. We invest our own capital. We are tax efficient. We monetize the tax benefits internally, so we are pretty efficient on the transaction, and we don't need to go to LPs to make decisions. we are long-term owners. We don't sell projects. So when you enter into a deal with us, we're going to be the ones operating those projects. We provide PPAs and site leases doing community solar. Yeah, we hopefully can be helpful when it comes to looking at projects and understanding the development and installation risks and benefits and ways to do things. Of course, some people may view that as a negative, because when you send me a design, I am going to look at it and question it and maybe push back on it. So we're not just a passive investor. But I think we're pretty EPC friendly when it comes to thinking about payment milestones and ensuring a project's moving forward with the right payment pace. And deal size. I mean, working with the Montgomery County Green Bank is great. We've been able to be more transaction flexible and can do smaller projects. But we're also more than just a third-party financing shop. Like we do have our own Maryland PUC approved subscriber organization. So we can do our own subscription management if need be for community solar. Frankly, for larger projects, we do typically work with third-party firms. But if it's just a small project and we're signing up a lot of the tenants on site or condo owners, things like that, we'll just manage that internally. SREC financing, like I said, that's actually our biggest business, and some of you may already be customers or clients of Skyview when it comes to transacting with Maryland SRECs. And then electric vehicle charging. We're certainly not the largest in the country, but we've certainly now got a lot of experience installing, owning, and operating electric vehicle charging. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt? All right, while you're thinking of your questions, I've got a poll for you. This one is on tax equity. Does your organization have its own or your own tax equity investors? Important for third-party contracts, right? A couple more seconds. All right, so it looks like the majority of you say no. So that tells me that you do need some assistance with third-party transactions for properties that may not have their own tax equity. Would be helpful to have another party come in and bring in that equity. Oh, we've got a question from Corey. Hi, Corey. Matt, do you work with third-party charging networks as well for your EV infrastructure assets?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, most of our charging stations are actually on. We use EV Connect's software management solution, but they're now I forget the right term, but you're right. They're now visible or part of most networks. So if somebody's on a different one, that's still visible. But yeah, those softwares are becoming more compatible.
All right, thanks. This next poll question, before we move on, is about CPACE, or Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. Some of you may know about CPACE and some of you may not. So this is how we're going to gauge that. So if you're interested in learning more about CPACE, you already know what it is, let us know. There is the ability to finance a PPA using CPACE as well. And if you have questions about a PPA using CPACE, we have Colleen on from Floorbright Bank. Don't mean to put you on the spot, Colleen. Couple more seconds. All right, so some of you are interested in it, some of you are not, that's fine. And some of you need to know some more. So that tells me a lot. I appreciate it. We'll get some more information out. You can definitely always send me a quick message if you'd like some information on CPACE directly, or if you'd like a short training. Thanks again, Matt and Sean. Happy to introduce you from Revolve. Did you unmute?
Hi, Cindy. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. My name is Sean McGahee. I'm the Director of Solar Product Operations at Revolve. I'm very excited to talk to you today about us financing solar for nonprofits and houses of worship. So Revolve, excuse me, is a climate justice organization, and we offer financing to fellow nonprofits and houses of worship while educating community members about the benefits of solar energy. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're based in San Francisco, but we work across the country. Pretty much we'll look at any project in the state that allows third-party financing. And we've been around since 2011. So our three pillars of our organization is empower, invest, and educate. So Revolve was started because we wanted a way for community members to be able to take action against climate change and support clean energy. And so our first pillar is empower. And so we do that by training community members on solar energy. So we have an ambassador fellowship program where we train mainly college students, but some community members. We give them some training about renewable energy, financing, technology. They'll look for nonprofits in their area to go solar, and then they'll also educate their community about the benefits of solar energy, and then work with us throughout the installation and the ribbon cutting ceremony. So we've trained like around approximately 375 ambassadors from 33 universities across the country. Many of our ambassadors go on to work in clean energy, which we love to see. And they've helped bring us solar for 21 different nonprofits across the US. And so for solar financing, we can offer a PPA or a lease. We prefer a PPA. Zero down, no upfront capital investment for the nonprofit. Our target is 10 to 15% savings for the nonprofit in year one. Standard 20-year term, although we can be flexible if there's interest in a shorter term or a down payment. O&M is included throughout the term of the contract, so no out-of-pocket costs throughout the term. And right now, we are the owner and operator of the system throughout the term. And at the end of the 20 years, we're going to transfer ownership back to the nonprofit at no additional cost. And we've also created what we call a solar seed fund. So basically, we pool all our project's revenue into a fund, and we'll use that to finance future solar installations. So it's a paid forward model, and I think it's a really cool aspect about Revolve. So the nonprofit can save money on electricity costs, support clean energy, and then their monthly PPA payments to Revolve is going to help finance future solar installations. And this also allows us to be flexible. So we can go, we work across the US for a lot of projects in California with high electricity costs. That we can use that to subsidize projects in states where it's not as common, like Pennsylvania and Ohio. So we're okay, not every job needs a pencil for us. Ideally, yes, but by being able to pool all our projects' revenues, it allows us to be a lot more flexible in the projects that we look at. So educate. So we love telling the stories of our nonprofits and their important work. So throughout the installation process or throughout the design process, we'll share info and social media throughout it. We have a community engagement coordinator that works on the messaging. And then once the system is live, we'll organize a ribbon cutting ceremony. We'll invite the nonprofits, community, the public, sometimes elected officials, and we'll highlight the nonprofit going solar, and we'll also use it as an opportunity to educate the public about the benefits of solar energy. We do not do residential, but we hope that these ribbon cutting would inspire folks to go solar, and we would, give those leads to the installer that did the installation. So yeah, we recently had our 10-year impact, our 10-year anniversary last year. Real exciting. We have about 50 projects now. Here's a map of 12 states, and we actually just signed our 13th state in Montana. So over 3.3 megawatts, we have about $10 million of capital invested, which has generated about $20 million in savings for the nonprofit. So we have a link on our website if you want to read the report, and there's also a really great video that shows our impact. And these are some of the areas that our nonprofits and House of Worship work on. So there's BIPOC, veterans, youth, arts, housing, faith, conservation, community development. So it's a wide range of services and programs that we support. And for me, it's one of the great things about the job is like working with all these different nonprofits across the country and houses of worship and supporting their work with clean energy. Very exciting. So for project requirements, it needs to be a community serving nonprofit or house of worship. We do not work with HOAs. We really want to see a community element to the nonprofit. Nonprofit must own the building or have a long-term lease. Excuse me. The roof must be in good shape. Ideally we'd have at least 10 years left on the roof. So for a nonprofit, we'll review the 990s. If it's a house of worship, we'll ask for a couple of years of the financial statements to do a quick review. And for the usage, we do love working with utility API. So we have an account, we can pay for it. We're just going to get the rate authorization, or if you have 12 months of energy bills, that works as well. And basically for the equipment, it needs to be tier 1. And as it is a PPA, we will need a revenue grade meter. If you use SolarEdge, they have an integrated RGM, which is a great option and it's not too expensive. And no minimum system size requirements. So we've done 2 kilowatts all the way up to 600 kilowatts. So we're willing to look at pretty much any project and no minimum system size requirements. So how to submit a project, we do have a sign up on our website. You can put the information, or if you want to send me the project details and I can run the numbers. But basically we need to know who the nonprofit is, the system size, capital cost, first year production. If you have a Helio or Aurora report, that would be great. Energy bills if possible, and any installation details that we should know about or project assumptions. And then we'd love to see, what type of equipment for the panels, inverters, racking, and monitoring. So basically, we'll review the details, run the numbers, create a PPA proposal. Whenever possible, we'll work with Montgomery Green Bank. They've been great. We're about to do our first project together. So if it's in Montgomery County, we'll definitely try to work with the Green Bank. If it's outside, we can definitely look at it as well. Basically, we'll do a proposal walkthrough with the client, then we'll sign a PPA with the nonprofit, and then an EPC contract with the installer. We'll build system, and once it's live, we'll organize that ribbon cutting ceremony. We do have a dedicated asset manager, so they'll monitor the system performance, they'll do the monthly invoices and handling any O&M. And then here's a few slides of some of our projects. So we did a VFW post in South Carolina. This was an ambassador program, 15 kilowatts, 33,000 in savings. Cool story about this one is there was a neighboring VFW post that saw that they went solar and then they decided to go solar afterwards. So I love seeing that solar being contagious and other folks going solar. And Northern California Land Trust, affordable housing in Berkeley, California, 11 kilowatt system, 60,000 in savings. Also done at Faith Baptist Church in East Oakland, 6 kilowatt, 50,000 in savings. They have a really big food distribution program, so it's great that they can use their savings to further support those programs. And very excited about our first project with Montgomery Green Bank. We're going to be installing a project at Sandy Springs Meeting House. And so the 31 kilowatt system and net savings for the client is about $100,000 over the lifetime of the system. So we're currently in the contracting phase, and hopefully we'll be getting contracts signed in the next week or two. So very excited about that, and look forward to working more in Montgomery County and on the East Coast and with the Green Bank. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and give me a call or ask me now, or just, save my contact information.
Sean, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Let's see if we've got any questions. While we're waiting, I have a poll for you. What is your average system size? So this is for everybody. We don't discriminate. Give it another second. All right, looks like we're kind of spread across a little bit more between 100 and 200 kilowatts than below. Of course, that's where economies of scale come in, but you have to have the roof or the ground to do it, right? All right, Cord, I see you're unmuted. Did you have a question, or were you just unmuted from before?
I was contemplating asking a question.
Go ahead, Cord.
Yeah, so what's the largest project you've done, Sean?
600 kilowatts. So for the majority of our projects are pretty small, like sub 100 kilowatts, but we're doing 6 large carports in Southern California, and they're vary from 200 to 600 kilowatts.
Awesome. And where do you guys get your funding? I'm sorry if I missed it.
No, good question. So a variety of sources. So we're currently doing a fundraise to donor advised funds, recoverable grants, foundations, individuals. So it's a real mix. And we're also working with Green Banks, Montgomery, and hopefully DC as well. So it's a mixture.
Thanks.
Of course.
All right, last poll of the day. Hopefully you by now have a better idea of the answer to this question. What's the benefit of using the Green Bank? Do you get better pricing because of our low cost capital? Do you get financial comparisons and other options? Do you get both, or are you not sure? Hopefully I did my job here. Couple more seconds. All right, the answer is both. So putting our capital in, usually anywhere between 50 to 70% of the total project cost, gets better results. So what does that mean? That means that your PPA price would be a little bit lower than it would if you just went straight to the developer. So The developers on the call, they know we're in Montgomery County, so if you do happen to contact them and forget us, they'll reach out to us anyway. So feel free to reach out to anyone on the call. If Matt and Stacy, I don't know if you put your contact information up, but if, or Sean, if any of you want to put your contact information in the chat, you can. We are recording this and we'll be able to send it out.
Sure, I'll do that right now.
Great. I'm going to put my information in the chat as well. And then any last comments? Anything? Stacy, I know you went first. Anything maybe you wanted to add, or Matt? Anything you?
No, thank you for organizing. I thought that was really informative and covered a lot of ground very efficiently. I mean, I'm putting my contact information in.
All right, well, thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful day and reach out to any of us for more information. We hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Cindy.
Janine. Take care.
Bye.
Take care now. Josh, do you want to go ahead and stop the recording?
Sure. That's probably a good idea.